Hey everyone, my name's Matt. This is my first time in Budapest. I'm so excited to be here. And when I was invited to do this talk, I was, again, really excited. One, because I get to talk about what I do. And then two, since being at this festival over the past few days, I've seen a lot of discussion of data and AI and technology. And I think this short talk might paint it in a different light for y'all. But behind me are a lot of moving images. This is essentially a montage of projects that I do. They're all very visual. Often they manifest as just articles on the internet, but also as videos and often about music. And underlying all of these are data. And you've used data if you've used spreadsheets, and I think most of the people in the audience have. But they also wield code. So combining data and code might come to mind with making apps or business applications. But the projects that I do mostly manifest as what you would think of as art projects. So an example of that, which just came out a couple months ago, this is Google Street View. What you missed was a picture of a spreadsheet and a picture of code. OK, so this project came out a couple months ago. This is Google Street View. And you can see what we did was we highlighted different text that you can see in the panoramas as you move around the 360 view images. So we have never forget. We have someone on their van that wrote, if you don't know, now you know. And this is just kind of a silly project on the internet. It does have a serious side if you look hard enough, but you can do cool things like this, which is every mention of pizza that you can see on the street in New York City. This is church in Spanish, so you can see interesting things like Spanish-speaking enclaves throughout New York City. For fun, you can go to this URL if you want. You can search for whatever you have in your head. This is just Budapest. I found some guy that has Budapest on his shirt. This is Hungary. So these are just the hotspots of where Hungary was in New York City, if you're curious where all the Hungarians live. And these are the most common words in New York City. And again, you could probably take an academic lens to this and do some smart research and papers. But this is really just fun for just a thing on the internet. The #1 word in New York City is no. So no parking, no trespassing, no loitering, no standing, all that type of stuff. So this project is kind of emblematic of the things that I work on. It's kind of at this intersection of art and code and data and storytelling. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. And growing up, I didn't think that intersection existed. I thought you either were kind of like left-brained or right-brained. And I grew up actually doing lots of fun, weird art projects for friends and family. But I was always really good at data and coding. I just have like the stamina to stare at spreadsheets for hours. And I was good at science. So I was like, well, maybe I should be a chemistry major. And I didn't realize that there is a world where these intersect until years after leaving university. And that's not to say that like science and data science and research and physics don't have a creative side. They're immensely creative. But I think speaking to a younger generation, they don't necessarily see that these two things can be combined. They see them as mutually exclusive. So when they do come together, they can offer a really poetic lens of looking at the world and some interesting skills. So this is just a hodgepodge of careers that I've thought about that kind of sit at that intersection. And I think these are really cool. Like, I'm like, if I talk to somebody young enough, I'm like, what do you want to do? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, this is so interesting that you can kind of take the artistic side and the science data side and bring them all together. So we're going to talk about that today as quickly as I can. We're going to talk about where they might be going and how you can start. So how could you start? I mean, I just thought about, well, what if we just redid the thing from New York City for Budapest? Like, you could walk around and write down all the words that you're seeing on the street. That sounds like a lot of work, so maybe you just stick with graffiti, which maybe is possible. In fact, I know it's possible because there's a really cool project in Detroit where they went house to house looking at whether they were vacant or occupied, what level of quality the house was in, and they mapped everything. We're talking about thousands and thousands of homes, and it's one of the coolest journalistic projects I can think of because it's this manual level of data collection. Of course, manual seems like a lot of work, so if you know where the data is, you can do some interesting things that blend that technology and artistic side. So this was a project that was using existing data. This is every basketball court in America. It's tens of thousands of images that you can zoom and pan around. Again, there's a serious version of this, but this is really just a fun, artsy thing on the internet. This is searching Detroit, which is where I'm coming from, and these are all the courts in Detroit. And you might be wondering, well, how do you get this data? Well, people have collected it already. There's a project called OpenStreetMaps that has individuals voluntarily writing down where things are on maps. So this is all of the pitches, I assume soccer pitches or football pitches in Budapest. And you might be wondering how to get the data out of here. We'll talk about that in a second. And another really popular data source is Wikipedia. This is a project I did years ago looking at the most popular person who grew up in particular cities on Wikipedia. So this is just some random place in the Midwest. But someone actually did a version of this for the world. So you can do cool things like zoom in on Budapest. And I assume you all know these names. And these are the most popular people on Wikipedia who grew up or were born in these cities. So I think that's really cool. The data's out there. It's in Wikipedia. You just need to know how to get it. And I know there's been a lot of discussion of AI. And I forgot how to get the data out of Wikipedia, so I just asked ChatGPT. We're going to talk a lot about AI if I have time, but here's just a list of people that it spit out from Budapest. Doesn't have to be complicated data. This is a project that also mentions Budapest. We looked at the climate zones of various cities throughout the world and just put together a fun little visualization that says, given climate change, what new climate zone will these cities be in? So you can click Budapest and see it shift to the present-day climate of places like Madrid, Tehran, and Prague. So just very simple data set, but bringing it to life visually. You can even collect your own data. One of my favorite projects from one of my colleagues, they just went to the mall, the shopping mall, and measured the size of women's pockets and men's pockets to show the size disparity. We made some cool charts. They made this fun animation where you can click different objects and see if they fit in women's pockets versus men's. And maybe you're really intimidated by all these pretty animations. You can just draw them. This is one of my favorite artists, data visualizers, Georgia Lupi. And she hand draws everything. And there's a lot of technical data underlying these drawings, but she doesn't have to necessarily code them to bring them to life. Another really cool hand-drawn visualizer is an Instagram account and TikTok account called Sportsball. And this is one of his videos talking about cycling. And I'll let it play. But he's just making the charts by hand. But again, there's tons of data underlying this. And I think of these drawings as very artistic. So what do we want to talk about in terms of the future? Well, hopefully I've gotten you somewhat excited about this space and what a time it is to be alive, to experience what is possible today versus what it was 10 years ago. So where are things going? I mean, the obvious thing is what is in all of our pockets, our phones, our magic. This is a project that I did looking at the population throughout the world, but instead of showing them as dots or a heat map, they're kind of like little mountains or towers. And this looks really great on a computer, but looks terrible on a phone. For a while, it would just crash and not work. But today, there are amazing experiences that you can do on your phone. Just the hardware is so good. And not only just the performance, but like people are using the cameras, so you can do interesting augmented reality things. The New York Times did these projects that allowed you to use your camera to compare your speed against an Olympic runner, or what the spread of COVID might be in a classroom. So just the tech is really cool at the moment. The second thing is the accessibility of just making something on the internet is growing. So you have an idea, oh, I want to make this really cool thing, and the distance from that idea to finished product is shrinking. A great example of this is this concept that has been floating around since February called vibe coding. And it's essentially like maybe you know how to code, maybe you don't, but you're just kind of pairing with a large language model to make a thing. There's actually an app called Gizmo, which I'm really intrigued by, where they basically, I mean, you can see it right here. You type in an idea, and it's moderately silly. We're not talking about serious apps here, like make a drawing canvas where my dog is a paintbrush, and there you go. There's so many really clever ideas here, and I actually reached out to them to ask them how they would talk about this app to the younger generation. And they thought this was an interesting platform to bring your ideas to life that might not be so intimidating. And I asked them about a lot of the controversies around AI. Like, we know the environmental impact. We know the fact that it's built on the shoulders of tons of creatives and coders like myself. And they felt like any other new technology, it's just a potential way to express yourself, like clay or painting or the internet. So it's an interesting way to think about AI bring your ideas to life, but with also considering some of the implications of the technology not necessarily being great for the world. A lot of journalists have been talking about their experience with vibe coding, just making stuff, and they, not necessarily unanimously, but all talk about the magic they felt having an idea and being able to bring it to life without that learning curve that a lot of us have to experience of needing to code or needing the skill set to make something. And what I've noticed is a lot of people who are leaning on AI, they realize that once they have success and they see the magic of making something, they realize that their ambitious projects are even greater than what you can do with AI, and they actually do start learning some of those technical skills. So I think that's really cool. And it reminds me of this chart that I think about a lot, which is all of us have had a really cool idea that we want to put out into the world, but it's really frustrating. Like, you run into roadblocks. You realize the thing that you want to make requires learning new skills or just dealing with the production process, and you kind of hit that bottom of the arc of like the dark night of the soul. And I think a lot about whether some of these new technologies like vibe coding could potentially make this valley not as intense as it is as it used to be. And I'm excited of what that means for what we can all make together. And going back to the careers that I mentioned before, I'm excited about these because we don't necessarily have that barrier of the technical skills to move into some of these careers. Like, one of the things I'm really excited about, which I'll talk about in a second, is like an urban technologist. So you care about cities, you care about the urban fabric, but you don't know JavaScript. And it's just, what a time to be alive where you can actually do things with technology without being held back by not knowing some of those technical skills. The third thing that I think is really interesting in the future is the data that is going to be coming off of AI, hopefully for good. I'm not casting any judgment on this, although I'm slightly frightened by it. The New York City Department of Transportation, for example, mentioned that they are putting out a call for what AI can do to build safer streets. So they mentioned New York City is 6,000 miles of streets, and what could happen if you had cameras everywhere wired up to a large language model to start monitoring things and generating data off of it. And I really hope they do this responsibly and they don't just save it for weird things that the NYPD can do. But this is happening, and the immense data coming off of it is really interesting for some urban technologists. And the same thing for me. I think of myself as kind of a quasi-journalist, and a lot of newsrooms are using large language models to listen in on public meetings and the data that they can generate off of that. I mean, most local newsrooms don't have the staff to attend every meeting, and just recording it and having it all be quickly structured can just mean they can expand their coverage for their audience. So hopefully through this presentation, you're thinking about how you can make again, and you're thinking about data and technology maybe a little bit more artistically. And I think we all have that innately in us. I mean, if you see a 5 or 6-year-old, they kind of chaotically make things. And for me, at least, it was kind of beaten out of my brain over elementary, secondary school, college, where your life is around assignments, quizzes, job interviews, standardized testing. So I do think there is something about learning to make once again. And I'm saying, don't make TikToks and Instagram just to be famous on the internet. Like, I want you to make things just for fun, because there's a beauty in making art and music. And if you do need more structure, there's actually this wave of new programs that are coming out in this space. I mean, I just saw this created from a university in Spain that has a master in applied AI for arts and design, which sounds really cool. I'm curious what the syllabus will look like, but in my home state of Michigan, there's a Bachelor of Science in Urban Technology at the New Museum in New York City. There are fellowships that are sitting at the intersection of art and code. I guarantee there's places closer to Budapest that are doing interesting things as well. So over the course of this talk, I hope you're thinking about making once again, and not necessarily for a job or a career or an interview or money or popularity on the internet, but just for fun. Thank you.
Okay, so we're now going to bring out the hot seat for you. And so you're going to put you in the hot seat to answer some questions. And in order to do that, we have several microphones circulating around. Put your hand up if you've got the microphone.
Hi. First of all, I want to say thank you so much, Matt, for this presentation. It really opened up some, new things that I didn't know before, honestly, about this project and creating stuff for fun. And my question is a bit more generalized, but I was wondering, where do you see the AI developing, in the future? And how will it affect not only the jobs in the data field, but in other fields as well,
Honestly, if I ever got this question, I would say I don't know. I wish I knew. There are people up here I know in past talks who have lots of really good predictions, and I would have never guessed where we are today. It just seems, it's like, what a time to be alive. And I see some articles like from this morning that talk about, AI doesn't replace 100 engineers. It makes one engineer 100 times better. I don't know, maybe. We actually did an internal test on our team where we tried to make an article, kind of like the ones I showed you, using AI, completely unprompted. We were just like, hey, make up a cool visual essay that talks about data and reveals something in culture. And it actually made a thing. And you can find it online on The Pudding, and then just Google AI experiment or something like that. It was fine. It wasn't going to replace us, but we were really impressed with where it got. And it coded a bunch of interactive charts, a whole web page. And I don't know where we'll be in a year. I mean, it could very well be doing much more amazing things. But right now, it's kind of like a mediocre intern, if left alone.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you.
Put your hand up high so I can see.
I have
Over
a
here.
question.
Perfect.
So why the hell do we need this much data? What are we going to do with it? And is it a possibility that we put so much more effort into collecting data than actually using the data?
Yeah, I am really scared of the amount of data that's getting collected. There's a researcher in New York City that I've worked closely with, and we talk about the data that the New York City Police Department is compiling just for fun. Not for fun, but like for just having it. And there's no restriction on how long they can keep it. There is no transparency on even what they have. They just have data for one day to use for whatever nefarious purpose. So I'm really scared by the amount of data, and I wish there were more regulations on what can be collected by governments and how long it can be kept.
Thank you. Next question. Anyone?
Thank you. So I'm a data scientist student, and I was wondering, what's your stand on learning to code? Because at school, we were taught different search algorithms and everything, and many students say that it has no point right now to study these things because we can just use AI to code this for us. So what's your stand on that?
Yeah, I didn't use this phrase, and I wish I did, although it is a little bit spicy. But I do think that that vibe coding thing I mentioned is a bit of a gateway drug, where it's like, oh wait, I can make something, and it's not as bad as I thought. But I can only make this annoying thing that the AI knows how to make. I have a higher ambition of what I want to create, and I do think eventually you realize that you have to learn some coding skills to realize the vision that you have in your head. So I don't think it's going to completely replace. There's no world where we never have to learn how to code again. I just think that there's going to be some tasks where there's going to be a lot easier of a time of working with an AI. I mean, honestly, I don't really know what's going to happen for AI. I'm going to keep saying I don't know. I wish I knew what was going to happen, whether engineering, software development, and computer engineering were going to go away and be replaced by AIs. But right now, we're not there. And again, I think working with an AI is a little bit of a breakthrough for learning to code, I think, for a lot of individuals.
Thanks. Next question.
Well, it's not an actual question. I just wanted to thank you for this presentation because I'm also a data science student, and sometimes we get to learn these things from teachers or people who are not that enthusiastic about this stuff. So it was really I just loved your enthusiasm, and it made me really happy that it can be not that boring and it can be fun. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. I actually am teaching a class to 19-year-olds in Detroit about coding right now. And I'm just so excited, and they just don't get it. They're like, why am I learning this? I just want to make stuff in Photoshop. But it's kind of going back to what I said. You both are data science students. I don't love the pedagogy where it's like, okay, you're going to learn Python, and then you're going to learn pandas, and eventually that will help you in your interview. I wish it was just like, okay, you're learning pandas to make this cool thing, and working around projects to make something is just so much more meaningful when you have to learn a skill. So that's one thing I hope you two perhaps take away from this is like, oh, I just learned this thing in my data science program. Now I can do this thing in the world that's really exciting that I've always thought about making.
That it's not that serious. So like
Yeah.
it can be fun.
It can be fun, or it can sound like, again, like that New York City project could be serious. Like there's a version of that the collaborator made in LA that's looking at how many grocery stores post whether they take, it's called EBT, which is the public dollars for buying food for low-income individuals. And you can make a serious version of that project too. So not everything has to be serious, not everything has to be fun. There's always that like spectrum.
Thank you. So I deeply agree with you on the project part. I think that's very important to have fun. But I just wanted to touch on the point where do you not fear, or do you fear that the AI gets deeper into these programming projects, and because of the lost expertise, is gonna skew the data? Because I feel like it's really easy to skew the data to one side. There are many tricks and yeah, so I just wanted to ask you that if AI, I believe, wants to be right than wrong. I mean, reinforcement learning is really behind that, I feel like. So, yeah.
Yeah, I am also scared of that too. I have a lot of fear about the black box of the output. It's kind of like, again, working with a really mediocre intern sometimes, where you're like, give them a task, and you're like, okay, do I spend 10 minutes reviewing their work or 5 minutes? Like, did they screw up somewhere? There's actually a great article in a Substack, I'm blanking on the author's name, but they compared AI to a wizard, and it's like, how much do you need to check the wizard's work? You can kind of trust it, and 99% of the time it's right, but like that tiny error could be really, really bad news. I think there was a woman who presented talking about a false citation that was created across all these papers because of a computer vision issue reading some text. So that is a big fear, I think. And yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a better response other than that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's thank Matt. Thanks, Matt.